You ready for this?
Let's do it, man.
Okay, Dr. Glen's ready. We're ready. Okay, this is part 2 of body language and communication cues to tell if a relationship is healthy from the perspective of a wedding photographer.
You're shooting the wedding. You're in it. Yeah.
Or any event. But let's go ahead and just get into this with the intro. Welcome to 12-Week Relationships. This is your place for better relationships in weeks, not years. My name is Pye.
I'm Dr. Glen.
When we say relationships, we mean all of them, starting with the one you have with yourself and working your way outward to all the other ones. And just as a note before we dive into this, if you guys want to hop onto 12weekrelationships.com, you can join our newsletter where we're going to give you awesome tips and guidance each week. I'm actually writing these by hand. They're going to be really cool. Yeah. And you can also sign up for the waitlist to meet directly with Dr. Glen, sign up for coaching packages and whatnot, if that is something you're interested in. But with that, our sponsor message is done. Let's get right into this. Okay,
Once again, sponsored by no one.
I know. Sponsored by, no, we're sponsored by ourselves.
Oh, that's right.
Come
Okay,
on.
sorry.
Okay, so we're doing a follow-up episode because the last one, by the time we started filming, we had like 11 of these points, and we're probably going to have more. So we thought, let's just do a part 2. So we have 6 more of these, and I'll go back to my research notes and dig up some more. These are, I think, really fun to kind of talk about.
No, I agree. Do you want to revisit the first 5 or should we just move on?
Why don't we just briefly go over them? If you missed them, check out that episode. But the first 5 we did, when someone takes the lead and walks in front, do they glance back? We did, how do they each behave around friends and family? We did uneven power dynamics. Does one person make all the decisions, and is there resistance within those dynamics? Number 4 was when someone observes something interesting, does the other person take interest and try to connect? And 5 was, are jokes used sarcastically to mask underlying frustrations? And that brings us to number 6.
Number 6, how do they each respond to challenges and conflict?
Oh, I love this one. I love this one.
Please elaborate.
I mean, there is so much conflict around a photo shoot. It doesn't matter what you're shooting, right? Whether it's family, whether you're doing, an engagement shoot, whether it's and then you have the wedding. The wedding itself is just a bag of conflict dropped on your doorstep. And by the way, when we say conflict, I feel like people, I don't know, when you hear that word, you think of fist fighting, right? What do you think of?
Just knocking each other. Fist fighting, yelling, screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we use it in context, what we're really talking about is these are opportunities for conflict. These are things that are challenging that must be overcome. But the way that they're handled, that is, up to the individuals.
Yeah, the conflict is how it's handled. It's the challenge. It's the challenge itself, and then the conflict that occurs because of it.
Yeah. So when we say conflict, what we're really talking about is conflict is healthy so long as the approach to resolving it is a healthy one, right? Conflict is normal. It's necessary. It's important. Mm-hmm. But yeah, how do they handle conflict? So I'll give examples. Major red flag is when there is an area of conflict in, let's say, planning the wedding. Their approach to discussing or managing that conflict is opposite. I almost found this to be, so for example, let's say that her mom the bride's mom is putting up some significant challenges, right? And kind of always weighing in and doing things, and the groom is frustrated. And the bride says, we should talk about this. And the groom goes, you know what? I don't want to deal with this. I'm done. And he just walks out. He's not saying he's done with the relationship. He's just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he just walks out, right? That's a major issue. Not because of that particular issue. I mean, it is annoying to have, your mother always interjecting and weighing in and whatnot. But it's more so the fact that one person is engaging and trying to resolve conflict and coming forward, and the other person is pulling away. And you can probably guarantee that that's going to continue through each type of conflict that they encounter. And it's very draining. For the person that's kind of pulling forward and wanting to resolve, it's a very emotionally draining piece to see the other person pull away.
Yeah, I mean, I think given that example, like in future, post-marriage, like anytime there's a struggle, like, hey, man, you're on your own.
Yeah.
I'm going to take care of myself. You do you, and you take care of it on your own. I'll come back when it's taken care of.
Yeah, it's that anxious avoidant kind of pairing, right? Where one person I know this because I am that person too. When there's an interpersonal issue in my life, if it's with someone that I'm close with, I want to resolve it. And if the other person is unwilling, it's a constant grind of my emotional energy to not think about it, to not, well, I just got to do it on their time. So I'm forced to kind of choose people in my life that are okay to take a head-on approach to conflict. Because if you're not, it becomes very emotionally draining for me.
No, agreed. And then in that example that you gave, as a couple, that is not an individual issue. That's a couple's issue that needs to be shared and addressed, talked through and worked out. That would be a sign that you're in a healthy relationship.
Yeah. You want to know what else is interesting? Other couples, I will give another example of two parents who, when they've been married for 10 years, and when they encounter conflict, they both yell at each other. What do you think everybody around them thinks as to the health of their relationship?
They would say, oh, this is unhealthy, because it looks like it's unhealthy on the outside.
It looks unhealthy, right? It's actually not from their perspective. Again, what I noticed was that it was more important that they approach conflict in a similar manner, not that they did it the right way. It was like, who's to say? I mean, when we talk about the subject of conflict, if you want to really know conflict, you need to become a professional negotiator, someone that spends their life understanding conflict. All of us suck at managing conflict, just to different degrees. So it's not really that big of a deal when one person yells, and that's also the other person's approach to resolving conflict, because that's the way that they both naturally handle it. But if one person yells and the other person is quiet, that's a problem.
No, I agree, because it shows an unequal power dynamic. Like if they're yelling at each other, and then it doesn't mean that it's healthy, but if it's getting demeaning, or they're saying really, they're trying to outdo each other, that's unhealthy. But if they're just expressing themselves in that way and that's how they do it, that's okay.
Do you know how many New York couples I photographed that and I'm not just calling out the East Coast. I'm just saying there's some maybe in the water. I don't know what's going on down there, but they would, when it comes to conflict, it was a normal thing when I'm photographing East Coasters to see them just go at it.
Just air it out.
Yeah. They'd be like, oh my gosh, your fucking dad is so annoying. And the other person would be like, babe, seriously? Your parents can also go to hell. And yes, I understand. And they would just go. Mm-hmm. And you're like, from the outside, it looks as though it's completely unhealthy. And granted, I will say there are more productive ways of resolving conflict than to yell and curse at each other. But at the same time, they're doing fine.
Yeah, there's healthy components within that.
Yeah.
I just wish you had the New York accent though.
Get out of here. I'm walking here. I can't even. I have a funny New York story that I'll make brief. My very first time in New York, I get out off the train in Grand Central. I'm sorry if I'm saying all this stuff wrong, but I get off the train. I remember walking, and I'm 6 foot tall. I have a fairly decent pace. I'm not slow by any means. On the West Coast, I'm usually walking past people. And I remember not 5 steps off the subway, I hear this, move, I'm walking here. And I'm like, and in my head, I'm going, holy shit, that is the most incredible thing. Within seconds, I've already heard the New York thing. And as I'm thinking this and turning, it's a woman pushing her baby in a stroller. I am slower as a 6 foot man walking than a woman pushing her baby in a stroller. I'm holding them up. And that's when I had to reevaluate my walking speed and life decisions.
Also, because of that, you walk faster now.
No, I think I walk the same speed. Now, in New York, I definitely walk a lot faster. New York is a stressful city for me to be in. I feel like for West Coasters, when we go to places on the East Coast like New York, we're constantly
it's a shock. Yeah, it's too overstimulating. You got to adjust.
And you don't want to be in people's ways, and you don't know, when can I cross? They're crossing right now. Should I cross? It's just your constant fight-flight mode in New York.
Sounds like you're still traumatized, man.
I am still traumatized. I love New York, actually, but yeah, that was my very first experience there.
That's so cool.
But it was important to understand that from a standpoint of conflict, it's not so much that you're good at conflict management. Nobody is. We're all at different varying stages of that. It's more so that when you approach it in a different manner than the other person, that's going to be a huge area of emotional drain.
Yeah, and it's not, instead of saying this is how it's supposed to be and it should be perfect, there's good and bad, but ultimately, like if it's healthy, even if it doesn't look like it on the outside, as long as there's a shared experience and they're trying to work through, it's fine.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Without my New York accent.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful video, a beautiful meme that shows New York conflict really down to the T. Have you seen the one with the dogs that scream at each other?
No.
It's like, F you, Timmy. Hey, what's your name? You know the what's your name one?
No.
What's your name? Okay, let's just
I'm sorry, man.
I'm going to have to keep catching Glen up on all the cool stuff.
You got to keep me current, man. Yeah. I learned it from you.
You got to go look for the what's your name dog video.
I will.
It's
I will after
one.
we're done, man.
But yeah, they tell each other to F off and then they're both okay. Like, everything's fine.
Cool.
It's cool. All right. You want to go to number 7?
Yeah. Number 7. Do they show concern for one another's energy and emotional state?
Yeah, that's a big one. There should be, in a healthy relationship, there should be the natural ability to perceive and to see the other person's emotional state. And when you do, like, are you aware of it? Do you say something? And oftentimes I would see one of, the couple, I would see one person kind of in distress and the other person completely unaware of it.
Well, this comes down to what we do. This is the foundation, the core values. Are you sharing core values? Are you living your core values? And do you have the regard, which is the respect and attraction for each other as a couple?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that there?
Yeah. So a lot of people might equate this to emotional intelligence, like EQ, and it is related to EQ for sure. But I like seeing where couples are kind of on the same wavelength on that side. When one person is completely aware of the other person's emotional state, but that person isn't aware of the other, that's kind of problematic. They should both have sort of they don't need to both, again, it goes back to like that similar concept of like, the way that you approach conflict, right? You don't have to both be incredibly emotionally aware and whatnot, but you should be at a similar level of awareness.
There's an alignment there. Like, EQ, there can be an emotional distance, whereas core values is, are you connected?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And distress kind of, that sounds like, I'm going to give you an example because distress might sound a little bit, I don't know, aggressive or a little bit like an emergency. I'm not talking about like emergency issues. I'm talking about, oftentimes guys, they don't want to necessarily be on a photo shoot, right? So you'll see their energy level kind of start to drop and it'll continue to drop. And is their partner, are they aware of this kind of like drop in that emotional presence? Like, can they see their energy levels going down? And in some cases they do. Honey, we're almost done. We're just going to do a few more. This is amazing. I'm going to give you a blowjob later. I'm just kidding. You can if you want, I'm just saying. Is that inappropriate? Anthony's looking at me like that was inappropriate. We're talking relationships and love, Anthony.
I think it's my fault from the last podcast because I brought that up.
The LMB.
Yeah, the LMB, man.
Yeah, now I've got
mine.
So
now it's in you. I'll take blame for that. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
Both of them are kind of aware of that. And you want to see the same thing on her side. Maybe she's like, they might be out and she's carrying a bunch of stuff because maybe she has a few different wardrobe changes and she clearly is getting tired of lugging stuff around. Like, is he offering, support and help? And so it's being aware of where each other's at is important.
No, I think that's really telling because like if you're getting tired, like, are you okay, honey? Versus like, come on, man, you're always getting tired or whatever the case may be. That would show that they're probably not in alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll let Anthony make the call on whether he's going to cut that piece out later. You're going to leave it in there? He's going to leave it in there.
Sweet.
Okay.
Number 8, do they scoff or take the other person's complaints lightly?
That one's a big one. This is a clear indicator of like a lack of regard for the other person, right? That fundamental piece of desire, regard. When someone suggests something, when someone, says, oh, I'm getting tired or I'm this, and the other person kind of scoffs at it or like, oh my gosh, like we just started. Oh, seriously? Like I've done so much. That's a sign that there's like a disconnect.
Or even if they're just not listening, right? Like, oh, I'm really tired. Yeah, okay, whatever. It's this kind of dismissive quality. That's just a sign of complete disrespect.
Yeah, one of the best times to see both this point and the earlier one is with family shoots when you're dealing with kids. because trying to wrangle kids, get them dressed and get them ready for like a photo shoot, that is difficult. And both people are double timing it. Like, both parents are just going at it. And when they land in front of the camera, are they aware of each other's struggle, or are they only seeing their own? Are they only seeing how tired they are and what they did? Or do they see what both people did? And are they both respectful to one another, in that process?
Is it fair to say, like, in those moments, like, the people that take their partner's complaints lightly, they just kind of generalize them because they're not really involved in their life? Because if they were, like, they would know the details of, like, I could see that you're tired here, or I could see, like, you've done this, and they're really involved in that. I think it's telling that it just shows like an emotional distance.
I would say so. I mean, if you are, give me an example, because I'm thinking of certain examples where, like, let's say, for a lot of couples, one person might not know how long it takes the other person to get ready or what they're doing to get ready, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's say, like, the spouse is, like, changing and carrying all these things and getting everything ready, and he or she is like, I'm really tired. And then the other partner is like, you always get tired at 5 o'clock anyway. It's no big deal. It's all good.
Yeah,
it's all good.
That's definitely not a good sign.
Right. It shows like I'm not really invested, or I just give you I'm not really involved in your life.
I mean, it's weird to bring this to a personal level, right? When we're getting ready for, like, let's say a family trip or a photo shoot or whatever it might be, Yen is usually getting the kids ready. She's, getting them all in their outfits and doing hair and doing her own makeup and getting herself ready. And I'm usually like packing the car and like trying to figure out what stuff do we need and getting everything good to go and then getting the kids in the car. Now, for you to get in the car and then to go to this photo shoot, and for you only to be aware of what you did and dismiss whatever the other person was doing, that's unusual. That shows a lack of awareness in terms of, what the other person is doing with their time. And that's a problem.
Yeah, so that's a huge red flag right there.
For sure. If we get in the car and I can only see, oh my gosh, what were you doing all that? The kids are dressed, they're made up, they're all good to go. And I'm sitting here going, what were you doing that whole time? That is a very big red flag in the sense of I am completely unaware of anything outside of my own purview.
Yeah, once again, this should be the standard of whether to pursue marriage or not based on what happens during this time.
Yeah, if you want to know whether you should get married or not, just start planning a wedding.
Planning it and then be in it and then make your decision after. No, I'm serious. I'm deadly serious on that.
Well, how would you do that? What do you mean, like plan someone else's?
This will be our next venture.
You know what? Yeah. What we'll do is we'll set up where you can plan someone else's wedding and be a part of it and then decide for yourself if you want to proceed.
And then you can see how it goes and then we can say, hey, I don't think so. Or this is a go, man. This looks good, man.
This is a terrible business venture. This is why you're fired. You're fired. You're fired from thinking of business ventures. All right. What do we got next?
Number 9. Have they taken an interest in one another's lives?
Yeah, I guess this ties back to that previous point too, right? Mm-hmm. But what comes to mind when we have this point specifically is that there's a lot of games that I'll play with my clients. So from the side of the photographer that's directing, I'll put them into a pose and everything. And once they're there, I need to get them to emote, to be authentic in front of the camera. And you can't really do that by saying things like, smile or cheese or, all that kind of stuff. You just get awkward moments. So what I do is I play games, kind of games where, I'm getting to know them and I'm testing their ability to like kind of know each other. And they're the same games that you might see played at a wedding, right? So I'd ask things like, okay, on the count of 3, I want you to say his favorite color. Let's go back to Tom and Jerry. They were our same-sex example. I'll say, Tom, I want you to guess Jerry's favorite color on the count of 3. And Jerry, you're going to say your favorite color on the count of 3. And it could be anything. You could substitute color for food, for activity, for, book, for whatever you want, right? And then you count down and they say it. And let's see if they get it right. Now, if it's not, again, is it a marker just because they don't know everything about each other? No. It's just, or I should say, is it a red flag if they don't know everything about it? No, it's not. It's just something where like, okay, maybe you don't know their favorite food. Maybe you don't know their favorite activity. Maybe you don't know. Those are 3 things that you don't know that maybe would be good to know. So that's a marker. But then later, if I ask a question of like, Tom, like, what does Jerry do for work? And Tom goes, well, actually, I'm not really sure. He's in sales. Okay, now we have a second marker on top of the first one, where it's like, now we're building towards a red flag. Like, you don't really know what Jerry does for work, right? And then down the road again, I ask, Tom, have you met any of Jerry's siblings? I met one, but I think he has two more. Okay, that starts to be like, okay, now we have a red flag. You really don't know that much about the other person, and you haven't taken an interest in their life.
That's scary, man.
For sure. And it happens not with Tom and Jerry. They were
Well, Jerry chases cheese, man.
We already talked about this. My same-sex couples, they're on point, man. They know shiz.
But no, that's really scary because they don't know anything about each other, and then their core values do not match at the core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that. But those are from those games, they're fun to play, and it's kind of like you get a quick gauge of how interested are they in one another's lives.
But I'm just saying, like, that has to be awkward. Like, if it gets to the place where, you're shooting and then you're just kind of like watching that, right?
Not really. I mean, it's a game, and whenever they answer the questions wrong, there's always good laughter and those and that's what I'm looking for as a photographer, right?
More the moment.
You're looking for the laughs and like the, oh my gosh, how could you not know this? And like they're playful and stuff. So they never pick up on it from that standpoint. It's more so just if I'm from the moment of like getting out of the car and, meeting them and talking and getting to know each other, if by the end of this 2-hour, 3-hour session, one person really doesn't know much about the other, then you're like, okay, that's problematic. And it happens quite a bit.
But that's a good indicator that this is probably the case, though.
Oh yeah, by the end of the shoot, like if we've gone 2-3 hours and there's markers all over, then we have a red flag. This is like, okay, that's going to be a problem. Because one person is so wrapped up in their own world that they're not seeing what the other person is doing. And again, this affects their ability, it affects the regard that they have for each other, it affects their ability to relate to one another, it affects reciprocation between the two. I mean, every point across desire is going to be affected by this one thing.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, when my wedding, because the person was getting to know me, the photographer, so she would, I'm kind of self-deprecating, so she was like, oh, your smile's off. So she was like, use your big head to block the sun for your wife. And then I started laughing. So it became more natural after that because,
I'm going to say that. Use your big head.
Thanks, man.
You do have kind of a big head.
I do have a very big head. I admit it.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it's a big head, man.
So it made you laugh?
It made me laugh. And then it was more natural after that.
Yeah.
But anyway, number 10, their ability to easily praise the other person.
Oh yeah. So one of the other games that I play is it'll be funny if I actually have clients that listen to this that come and shoot with me and they're like, I practiced everything that you said. I'm like, this isn't a test, man. But yeah, so one of the games would be to ask, like to put them into a close and intimate pose. And then I would say something like, whisper something sweet into her ear, or tell her your favorite thing about her, or for her, tell her your favorite thing about this, or whisper your favorite body part. It could be anything. Like, again, you kind of tailor it to the comfort level that you have between your clients, right? So if it's fun and intimate and playful, I'll say stuff like that. But if not, I'll keep it light. But a lot of people really struggle to say something nice or sweet to their partner.
Wow.
And that's unusual.
Huh. So so like, what's an example of that?
Well, see, usually what I'll joke around with afterwards is like, I'll say, now say what he or she said out loud, right? And I quickly say, like, don't worry, don't say it out loud. I'm just teasing. It's one additional thing that I'll say to get them to kind of react. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to tell you that because it was intimate or personal, right? But a lot of times I'll say that, and he or she might just say, they were just whispering cat noises into my ear, or they were just saying poop over and over. And again, in and of itself, maybe they're just having fun and being playful. In and of itself, not a big deal. But when you line that up with like taking an interest in their lives and all these other pieces, then you're like, ooh, I don't know if they actually see the value in the other person beyond simply being a couple.
Yeah, because it seems like in that moment you're trying to capture an intimate moment, right?
Yeah.
So if they're joking or they're not, there's an emotional distance in that moment. It's a show of that there's some intimacy issues taking place.
Yeah, it's a marker.
Yeah.
And I would have, entire shoots where each time I would give a cue like this, maybe 3 or 4 times during a 2 or 3 hour period, the person, would struggle to say anything. And both people would struggle, and they would just lean back on like humor, or they would lean back on, just saying weird stuff. Like, he's still saying weird stuff to me. I don't know why. and that in and of itself is still kind of funny, and it becomes humorous. But in the context of like, okay, this is a marker. And he also couldn't really explain to me what you do for work. And he also doesn't really know the things that you enjoy. And you also shared a story with me that he once bought you a gift that was nothing what you wanted. Then you start going, now we have a red flag. There's a pattern that shows that he's not engaged. He's not interested in your life.
That's what I'm saying. Like, once you see all these markers and you keep saying like, it doesn't feel awkward for you, but I would sense at some point, like, it's like, man, this is, I don't know, but this is where professionalism comes into play, and saying, okay, like, I'm just gonna have the boundaries. I just want to catch the moment, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I think part of the comfort too, though, that you might not be experienced with is the camera itself. The camera is as much of I often say, like, if you put me at a party and you ask me to mingle, that is quite possibly the definition of a nightmare for me. I hate small talk. I hate mingling. I'll do it. I'll pretend to be outgoing and I'll do it, but it's incredibly draining. But you put a camera in my hand and something else happens. Now the camera is kind of this sort of shield where I can walk up to someone and be like, hey, let me get a picture. And then I can say, hey, my name is Pye. Nice to meet you. It's this sort of barrier, almost like a mask that I get to walk around with, right? So when you say that it's awkward, the camera is that barrier for me, where it's like at any moment, if I feel like the relationship has awkwardness or tension, I kind of just pull back to planning my next shot. I pull back to the photography aspect of what I'm doing. So that's the sort of barrier that I keep to not make it weird.
Do you ever feel like the camera, because the whole point of like taking photos is to catch like genuine moments, but do you ever feel like the picture itself could be disingenuous?
Oh, yes.
How so?
I mean, in many cases, I gave an example in the last episode of from time to time, I'll photograph a couple who is a disaster. It's a complete train wreck, but the photographs I create, they look beautiful. They're Instagram worthy, for whatever that means. But underneath it, you know the truth of what that is. So yes, there's definitely an element to that, but I have to, like, again, separate I'm hired to create beautiful images of authentic moments. It's a weird one, because it's like some of those moments are beautiful. I don't know that they're authentic. It's not really my job, though, to make them authentic or to make the relationship underneath it. That was their job. And so I sort of disconnect my responsibility at point of capture.
No, I totally get it, because it's just interesting. Like, it'd be one thing if that was primarily what you do, but you set up frameworks, and then you set up, you wrote your book. So to me, it's just interesting how you conceptualize, like, knowing you, like how you would conceptualize all of those things when dynamics are taking place. I just find that fascinating.
Yeah, it's a trippy place. I remember 5 years ago when the framework was getting fleshed out and it was starting to come together, I would go out on shoots and I would know in moments if this was going to be a healthy relationship or not. And there was a discomfort at the beginning of, like, how do I keep doing my job when I know this isn't healthy? And within a few, months of doing that, I was like, okay, I need to disconnect from my job, from any feelings behind what I might have.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Number 11, how do they treat the vendors, service providers around them?
Oh yeah, this one's a great one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of, okay, first I have a hack I think I talked about this in the last episode. I said you had to get to the end of part 2.
Oh yeah,
to
that's
get to
right.
the
We're
hack.
here. That's
Yeah,
right.
we're here. If you want to know if someone's genuinely a nice person, I should say genuinely kind, right? Take them to a restaurant and have them interact with a waiter or waitress that they don't know. Very interesting things happen. Like when I would pay attention to couples, their family members and their friends, and I would watch it how these people would interact with the people that were essentially being paid to be there, right? The vendors, the support staff, all the crew. And there were like, it's a major marker, and I would say an instant red flag. If let's say she goes up to one of the vendors and is very kind and like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for, I mean, they're being paid to be there, but still, thank you so much for being here and for doing what you do. I really appreciate it. And then he goes to a vendor and goes, I just really need you to do your effing job, man. That is a fundamental difference in how they perceive people.
Oh, it's true.
And so when you saw that, when I would see that disconnect in how they would engage with other people, and it was more so with people they didn't know, because it's easy to be nice or to kind to people that you know, people that you've pulled into your life because they offer you some value in a way, right? That's just being nice. But kindness is when you choose to be nice, regardless of whether you have something to gain or not.
No, that's an excellent point, because vendors, they're here to serve you, right? They're providing a service.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're still choosing to be nice to them anyway and be respecting what they're doing, it shows who you are as a person. Versus like, you're here for me, you better do what I say. That shows that you're probably not a very nice person.
Yeah. I had one couple where this was incredibly noticeable, where I could see that. And what's funny is that usually they're going to be kind to people that they perceive as creatives or artists, right? So to me, they're always going to be nice because they perceive me as like, I don't know, like an artist. This is my, I don't know what it is. But then when it comes to like just wait staff, when it comes to someone, that's cleaning their room, that's what you want to pay attention to. And this woman was incredibly rude to everybody. And the man that she was marrying was very kind to everybody. He was just as grateful that his friends were there and as the vendors and support staff that were there. And I remember thinking, if this one works, then my framework is broken. Like, because they broke this whole framework across the board. And it wasn't, I think it was within 3 or 4 months that they were separated. And within 6 months, it was divorce. And it's because they each had fundamental differences in the way that they looked at the world, the way that they perceived others. That was a big one.
No, it totally makes sense. And then the vendor analogy, even with work, right? Like when you do a job interview, how they treat the secretary staff and the support staff behind the scenes, that will dictate what kind of worker they are, or if they're a good person, or they're conscientious and they care.
Yeah.
So it's the same analogy.
So if you're a kind person and you want to know if someone else is actually kind, invite them to a situation where they have to interact with people that, from their standpoint, have no value to gain from, essentially. Like, it could be a restaurant where it's like the wait staff. The person that sees the world this way goes to a restaurant and goes, the only thing you have to gain from me is my money, and I have nothing to gain from you. So put them in a scenario where they perceive they have nothing to gain from another person, and then see how they interact with those people.
And that'll tell everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Simple.
I agree. That's such an awesome, your work and then that environment. It's so telling. It's the ultimate truth environment.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing is that here's the thing that I feel like so much of my approach to this was inspired by the Gottman Institute. John and Julie Gottman, they've done incredible work in the space of studying and actually putting science to like studying relationships. And that is incredible. But there's one piece that I still felt like was missing from the academic view of relationships. And that's, how do people behave when they're not being studied? Because it doesn't matter whether, you're invited to participate in a study, or whether you're sitting in a counselor's room, or whether you're meeting with a psychotherapist or a life coach. in every one of those situations, when a person is aware, they're going to tailor what they show. And that makes the data kind of limited. You have to really carry the studies on for a long period of time to get good, valuable data. And the Gottmans did this, and they have good, valuable data. But what I loved about, the camera was that I could watch and engage, and I still get to observe, and to have data points that there's nothing personal about the information or the data that I'm pulling. It's just observing without any known, they don't know that you're observing. It's just watching in a natural habitat. Almost like the difference of being, watching an animal in a zoo. I'm not saying humans are, well, we are animals, but don't be offended by these analogies, please. It's kind of like, how does an animal behave when they're caged in a zoo versus when they're out in the wild? And when they're completely unaware that you're even paying attention.
No, it totally makes sense. And then what you've taken and what we've created in this 12-week relationship program, it's the laboratory of truth.
Yeah.
And that's basically the bottom line. So we've taken that, and then within these coaching sessions and frameworks and all the things that we're creating a laboratory of truth for you.
Well, that was the coolest part to me, was when I came to you and I said, okay, this is a book and a framework for how a healthy relationship should function. Like, these are all the components. And then I was like, but it's not a therapy format. It's not anything. It's just knowledge of this is what it should look like. This is the pattern. This is the framework. But then you took that and you applied 20 years of your experience and your understanding of psychology and your experience as a clinical psychologist and a doctor of psychology and a professor, and you applied all the academics to it that then turned it into a actual real world therapy model. And that was really cool.
No, just watching this whole thing come together is amazing. And then even like when you tell this story, it kind of gives me chills, because when I'm doing the sessions right now, it's like, yeah, I feel like we're shooting, like I'm getting pictures of their real life. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't have a camera. Well, Zoom I guess is kind of a camera, right? But it's just capturing these real moments instead of the traditional model of just like, okay, come back next week. Cool. And I'm just getting small glimpses.
Yeah.
This is actually forcing real moments.
Yeah.
Just like you were looking for and you were capturing, while working in that field, right? So it's just a translation. Like, it gives me chills because this is what we're doing.
Yeah. It's almost, the traditional model, there is value in terms of, the traditional model is a painkiller. You go and you look at the symptoms of the relationship and you go to therapy, and traditional therapy basically allows you to vent and to, discuss those things that are going wrong. And therapizing basically focuses on those symptomatic issues, like what is visible, where's the conflict, how are you fighting, how are you communicating, the patterns, that kind of stuff. And there's value in that. That is the painkiller aspect of, like, let's say modern medicine. There's value in a painkiller. Sometimes the pain is so much that you need a painkiller. But then let's say we actually have muscle damage, or we need surgery, or we need repair. Mm-hmm. Beyond the painkiller, you actually have to go and do the physical therapy, or go and get the knee reconstructed and then do physical therapy. You have to go to the problem and then resolve it. And then you utilize the painkiller again to kind of treat the parts that make it unmanageable, right? And so what we've done in this process is said, okay, traditional therapy is that painkiller and it's valuable. And we need to keep pieces of that. When a couple comes in, or when an individual comes in, we look at the immediate pain that they have and we treat it. We allow them to go through the process of working through this surface level, stuff that needs to happen. Mm-hmm. We give them the painkiller so that we can then focus in and go straight to the core of the problem. And then that's what this process does. Core value focused therapy then goes to the core values, the center of the problem. We work to resolve that, and then we start working our way outward back to. And in the meantime, like, sometimes pains bubble up, and we have to again go back to therapizing and back to like, okay, let's manage, pain and response and all that kind of stuff. But you have to have the actual fix in addition to the symptom level responses.
No, I agree with you. I love the analogy. I mean, if you hurt your leg, we'll tell you why you hurt your leg, mm-hmm. and what you need to do so you won't hurt your leg anymore, mm-hmm. right? But then also what you need to do to maintain and make sure your leg is healthy.
Yeah. You need a painkiller to stop the immediate pain.
Yes.
You need to know why it happened.
Sure.
We need to fix the problem internally.
Yes.
And then you probably need to keep taking the painkillers while you're rebuilding the leg until the problem is actually solved.
Yeah. And what you need to do to maintain.
Yeah.
That's the huge distinction.
But people get stuck in subscription to therapy. I mean, the average person goes for, the average people seeking therapy, we mentioned this statistic many times. They go for 5 years, spend over $50,000 in the process, and they have less than a 20%. We were being nice when we said 20 to 25% chance of improvement. That's being nice.
And we're talking long-term improvement, not the short-term reduction symptoms, because then it can go a little higher. Yeah. We're talking long-term results.
And therapy is becoming that subscription format because it's the painkiller. If you never actually heal the leg, then you're forced to keep taking painkillers over and over and over.
Well, the other thing too is even though you keep getting the painkillers, if you never address why you're hurting your leg, you just keep doing the same thing over and over, you just keep going back.
For sure.
My leg hurts. It's better now. My leg hurts again. It's better now. My leg hurts again.
Yeah.
At a certain point, we gotta go deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, my friend, we could talk about this for days on end, but you guys probably don't want to listen to that. So we will end here. We hope you all.
We only have 2 listeners, right?
Yeah, we only have 2. We hope you all have enjoyed the last 2 episodes. That's what I was looking to say, is both episode 1, the part 1, as well as this part 2, the follow-up, to kind of, viewing body language and communication cues from the standpoint of a wedding photographer. If you all enjoyed the episode, you can help us out by jumping onto iTunes. If you guys like the podcast, leave us a review at 12 Week Relationships on iTunes. Actually, write something in the description. Glenn and I love reading them. Yes. And if it's a negative review, don't leave it there. Just send it to us on Instagram. You guys can send us questions, comments, feedback, critique, anything on 12 Week Relationships on Instagram as well as TikTok. And that's also where you're going to find our shorts. So little short pieces of bite-sized information that are nice and easy to share with others. If you guys are interested in one-on-one coaching with Dr. Glen, you can go to 12weekrelationships.com and sign up for the wait list. If we don't reach out, it's likely because you're probably international and we're waiting for our online coaching programs to be available. We're working on developing those and we want to make sure that they're awesome and refined, but we do plan to launch them this year. And that's where we feel like our international audience is going to be best served. So
yeah,
that's it for us though.
And the newsletter, right?
Oh yeah, and the newsletter on 12weekrelationships.com. I'm working on handwriting a series of newsletters that are just going to be valuable insights fed to your inbox each week. No spam, no sharing your info, no nothing like that. Just really good, valuable pieces of knowledge and insights from our own research, from our case studies, client experience, everything. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, guys. See you next time.